Hey guys, I'm going to be doing my February and March wrap up. I read 5 books in February and 3 books in March, so I'm just going to get right into it. The first books I want to talk about are the books that I read for Read Soul Lit. The first book that I read for Read Soul Lit was xiomy by Audre Lorde, and this was a memoir that she wrote of growing up in New York. And the memoir kind of focused on her early adulthood years, so I would say between like 17 to 22. Around that time is where the main focus is. She talks a lot about her childhood, her moving to Mexico for a few years, her experiences there, working various jobs, coming to terms with her sexuality, beginning a few relationships with women, and kind of her growing up during this time. I didn't notice anything that felt mythical in the book. Nothing that really jumped out at me as something that would be considered a biomythography, so I don't know what that's all about. Maybe I missed something, but overall I really enjoyed the memoir. I loved Audre's writing style. I highly recommend this if you're into memoirs at all, or if you're just looking for a memoir that's written beautifully, almost poetic at times, then I highly recommend this one. The next book that I read for Read Soul Lit was All About Love by Bell Hooks. And when I first got this book, I thought it was going to be Bell Hooks' personal beliefs about love, her experiences with love. That's why I got the book in the first place. I thought it would be a great read for Valentine's Day. However, this book is more of a self-help book. It's more of a general guide rather than this is what I experienced, and that's kind of what I was hoping for. So I thought it was a good book. I feel like a lot of people would take some great lessons from it and learn a lot from the things that she talks about. Although some people might be put off by the religious tone towards the end of the book, or by the fact that this is something that she's putting out there as fact. And if that doesn't bother you, then you'll really enjoy the book. It's not what I was expecting, and so it's kind of a letdown in that sense. The last book that I read for Read Soul Lit I actually have with me, and it's The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. This is a book about several people, but really the main story is a young girl named Piccola, I think that's how you say her name, living in a small town. She has this idea that all she wants to be is beautiful, and so she really needs to have blue eyes to kind of be thought of as beautiful. It's very sad and depressing in terms of her story, but there's also another perspective, which is a young girl in her neighborhood that knows of Piccola and knows of her family life and is kind of an outsider looking in, and we get her perspective, which is, you know, a different way of looking at Piccola's situation. And then we have some backstories of Piccola's family. It's really a story about how traumatic events or just certain ways of us being raised or where we grow up, that will have an effect on our lives, that will affect us all later on in life, and we can have an effect on other people. So that's all I'm going to say about this. I loved it. I guess I should probably say how if I liked it or not. I loved it, and I love Toni Morrison's writing. The 3 books that I read from her are completely different from each other. Song of Solomon, Beloved, and now The Bluest Eye. They're 3 books that I feel could have been written by 3 different people or 3 different versions of Toni. But I can say that my favorite of hers is Beloved so far, even after I read all 3. Song of Solomon I wasn't crazy about. This one I like a little bit more than that, but Beloved is like my top so far. So yeah, that's what I'm going to say about The Bluest Eye. I'm going to stop talking because otherwise I'm just going to keep rambling about this book. The other 2 books that I read were from the library. The first one was The Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. This is a story of Junior, a young kid living in a reservation in the United States. This is basically a coming-of-age story in a sense. And what I liked about it was that it gave us an inside look into what life is like on a reservation. However, I did have a few issues with this book. I was thinking who I would recommend this book to. I would love a 12-year-old to read it, but I wouldn't recommend that a 12-year-old read some of the things that Junior talks about in this book or is as open about in this book. And then at the same time, if you were an older adult reading this book, there's some things that are going to just be like too childish or just you're not going to connect with this much because it's not for you. It's meant for a younger audience. I hope that makes sense. Another thing that I kind of rubbed me the wrong way is that in the beginning of the book, we learn that Junior has a disability, and then we never hear about it again. We don't hear about how it affects his daily life. Those are the things that I didn't like about it. There were some things that I did like, so I think I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars or something like that. I feel like a lot of young people should be reading it. I wish it would have been a little more consistent in certain things, but it was a really enjoyable read for what it is, and it really makes me want to read more about Indian reservations in the United States and how life is really like there. The last book that I read was In Order to Live by Xiomy Park. I've seen this going around BookTube and I've been really interested in it. This is basically Xionmy's story of her family, her childhood, what happened when she escaped to China, and kind of the courage and the strength that it took for them to make it to South Korea. Xiomy has a way of just writing with such emotion, and I found myself just captivated by her story. I don't know if it's because I'm so curious about a country where we really don't know much about what goes on in there, and all of a sudden we have this inside look in what life is like there. I just found her story so inspiring and amazing. I'm amazed by her. She never gave up, and she did what she had to do to survive and make something of herself. So I ended the month on that high note, and then I kind of went into a reading slump and I didn't really know what to do, what to read next. I picked up a bunch of books that were on my TBR, and some of them were not for me, or some of them I just saved for another time. I did end up picking up 3 books for this month. The first book that I read was A Place Without Shadows by P.T. Hilton. This is the second book in the Deadlock trilogy, and this was such a fun read. Like I've said a million times on my channel, the best things about these books is that they don't really fall under a particular genre. They're kind of all over the place. You have mystery, thriller, suspense, fantasy, or sci-fi, horror. It's just all kind of in one package, and it's just a fun read. I really enjoyed it, and I'm very excited about the third book in the trilogy. The second book that I read was Honor by Elif Shafak. I believe that's her name. I picked this book because Elif Shafak is an author that was recommended to me for my BookTuber Recommends project, and then I saw that Rinsey Reads did a review on this book and she really enjoyed it, so I checked it out from the library, which is why I don't have it with me, but I absolutely love this story up till the end. I was with the story up till the very end. I would have given this book 4.5 stars if it would have ended the way that I was kind of envisioning in my head. This is a story of a family who migrates from Turkey to London. They're a Turkish family. There is a mother, a father, and 3 children. One of those children grow up and end up doing an honor killing in that family. There are various points of view in the story. It does jump from past to present, and I think there's about 6 or 7 points of view that we are getting, so keep that in mind, that if you're not into those types of stories, you're not going to enjoy this book. I myself think that if it's done right, it really adds a great element to the story, and so that's how I felt about this book. It was just brilliantly written, and just how everything came together was beautifully done. However, I was not a fan of the twist. I was not a fan of the ending. I really want to read more by Elif Shafak because I just loved how she wrote this book and how she connected all of these characters and just the various different elements to the story. I really did enjoy that. And then the third book that I read I have with me, and that's The Sense of an Ending by Julian Barnes. This is another book that had kind of a twist at the end, a very confusing twist at the very end that I was just not happy about at all. But I did enjoy the voice of the character narrating this story. Mr. Webster does have a very distinctive voice, a very interesting way that he looks at things, at situations, how he analyzes his life, how he describes other people, all of those things. I really enjoyed his voice. Mr. Webster's in his 60s and is divorced and has lived a very normal, boring life. He's kind of thinking about the past and about how he could have done things differently, and thinking about certain characters in his past, because one day he receives inheritance from a person that he never expected to receive an inheritance from, and so that kind of sparks this whole story of him figuring out what happened. And so I really enjoyed this book up to the point where he comes in contact with Veronica, an old girlfriend. I found Veronica was used as kind of a plot device. She was purposefully evasive. You didn't really understand where her anger and her frustration was coming from. It was kind of like she was there to add a little bit of mystery to the story. And after a while, it just got old. I just wanted her to just come out with it and just explain what it is that she felt so strongly about. And then when we finally figure out the real truth, you're kind of like, what? That's it? Like, that's the big twist? I was not really impressed by it. I found that the whole book was written so elegantly until that disaster of an ending. I don't know if that's a little harsh, but I was just not happy with it because I expected so much from this book because I really was enjoying the writing style. I found it underwhelming, certain events and people, like I wasn't crazy about them. I know that's probably an unpopular opinion, but I wish it would have ended as elegantly as it started, but I can definitely see the appeal of this book. However, if you're not into slow reads, then you're not going to enjoy this book, so just a warning. If you're into more character-driven books, then I definitely recommend it. I'm pretty happy with the books that I did end up reading this month and last month, even though this month was kind of a slow reading month for me. I'm hoping to pick it back up in April. Please let me know if you've read any of the books that I discussed and if you have any thoughts about them. I'd love to hear them down in the comments. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.